Hi, I'm Veronica. I'm a somatic teacher and therapist, and this is the last part of my 4-episode mini-series where I dive deep into looking into the psoas muscles, these muscles that connect the lower and upper part of the body and tend to hold a lot of stress response, the tension that is caused by the stress response of the nervous system. And today we're gonna go through the movements where we put those psoas into action and maybe get closer towards what you might begin with normally when you work with psoas, but actually it should be like the last step. Okay, so let's begin on all fours. And whenever you land on all fours, the first thing to do is to find a place where you neither collapse through your joints, so you don't really give all the way to your wrists and to your knees, but you're trying to find a way to get the support of the earth, to find that this support spreads evenly through all points of contact, your whole palms, your whole lower legs. And then you can find the other 2 points of reference, and those are the top of the head and the tail. You might even imagine there is someone or something gently tugging at both ends so that you don't lose that connection. And here we're going to start moving the leg. So for that to happen, there has to be a little bit of a shift of the weight to the other leg so that this leg is free to move. And what you could start with is sliding that leg away until it's straight and then lifting it. But when you lift it, you don't really want it to lift it so high that you sink in your lower back and you sink between the shoulder blades and you end up in something like this with this big banana shape in your back. It's just a little bit of a lift. A little bit of a lift that is not going to affect your spine too much. All right, so this is the first part of the movement. And then the second part of the movement would be sliding that foot along the floor and bringing it close in. Now, if you're using only the leg and the hip for this movement, you're gonna stop here, but we do want to involve the spine as well. So now you can tuck the toes under and round the back and even shift your weight all the way back towards the heel. So you end up in that rounded shape. Everything gets rounded, including your head, so the head can drop. This is your fully rounded shape. The most compressed your psoas can be, yeah? And from there, you're gonna unravel. You could think of it as somebody pulling you forward or something by the top of the head, and then at the same time, that leg slides behind, and at the very end of this movement, it lifts. But remember, not too high. You don't want to involve the spine in this particular movement. So that's how it flows. You lower the front of the foot, slide it along the floor, round the back, tuck the toes under, and make yourself into a ball. And you can really think of it as this kind of furling and unfurling. You curl yourself into a ball, and then you unfurl, moving somewhere from the middle outwards, so that there is that sense as if something was pulling you by the top of the head from one side and through the heel by the other side. And you can do it maybe just 2 or 3 times on each side. You could add the breath to that. Inhale when you unfurl, exhale when you make yourself small. And then you can leave it. Come back to all fours, and maybe already here when you make some little movements, or maybe when you sit yourself back to the child's pose, you might already start feeling that there is a little bit of a difference in the sensations on one side and on the other side. Okay. And then let's go for that other side. Of course, if you need a break in between, feel free to release your wrists or do anything else. But the point is that if you're not sinking all your weight into your wrists, it should be quite sustainable and, in fact, quite healthy for your bones to do some weight bearing there. Okay, so you reestablish that place where you have the weight evenly distributed over all four limbs. And this time it can go a little bit more flowing. So you could begin with sliding that leg behind and lifting it not too high so that there's no big banana dip anywhere in your spine. And then you lower the foot, slide the front of the foot along the floor, bring that leg in, and then you add the spine as well. So tuck the toes under, round the back, make yourself into a bow. Inhale, unfurl, top of the head forward, heel back, and exhale, slide the foot, tuck the toes under, curl yourself into a bow, tight bow. With inhalation, you create that lengthening. With exhalation, you're making yourself really small and compact. And you really don't need to repeat it many times. 3, 4, 5 times should be more than enough. And then you can return again. Okay, maybe check how it feels when you're in child's pose or approaching child's pose. And we're gonna also check it in the positions that you might associate far more with psoas and with the hip flexors. So you might come into some very little lunge now. Maybe do just a tiny bit of a pulsation here. Notice how it feels. Any strong pulling, dragging is always like this warning sign from your nervous system. No, I don't like it. It's too much too soon. Then you don't really want to go to that huge stretches straight away, because the only thing that's going to happen is that in a protective response, this muscle will just contract even more. All right? And let's just check how it would be higher up. So you can tuck the toes under, lift that back knee, and there we go. We're in a standing position. And always nice to check first if everything is quite loose, so you can wiggle your pelvis, you can check that the legs are bouncy and responsive. And as you maybe notice, again, I'm not in that biggest possible lunge I could go for. My legs would allow that, but nowhere near that. It is much smaller stance. And I like to be also wider because that's more stable, as if I'm on 2 railway tracks. Okay, now toes of both feet are facing forward, and that back heel is still up. There is a bend in the front knee, but that doesn't mean that there is more weight there. So the weight is kind of right in the middle. I can search for it even a little bit, shifting the weight forward and backwards so that I find a place where I'm evenly on both feet. All right, once I'm there, that back heel is still up. And now what we're going to encourage, it's not like a big stretch and nothing forced, but rather use the visualization and take time to encourage that back heel to slowly start dropping away. You could even imagine that you have some hooks attached to the heel and that something is pulling by those little ropes, bringing that heel closer towards the ground. But the rest stays exactly the same. So your head is somewhere above the pelvis, the weight is still the same way, and the only thing that happens is as if you're making your leg longer. The only thing that happens is that the heel starts dropping away. And depending on what stance you chose, that heel might eventually reach the ground. Not that it's important, but if it does, you can continue with the same kind of movement. Your heel reaching down and back, as if you were standing in the soft soil or in the sand, and that heel was still diving deeper in. And what you might notice is that there might be some sensation around the calf, but you might also feel that something is slightly gently opening or very gently tugging in the front of your thigh, where you have that psoas. You could experiment also with adding the arm up, and that might become more of a whole body movement, but without reaching anywhere, keeping it quite soft, keeping that arm deeply in the shoulder joint. Okay, and then you can release that, step forward, and give yourself a moment to compare. Notice how it feels, one side and the other, maybe even have a little walk. Maybe feels a little bit more free, or in other way different, one side from the other. Okay, and then you can make it down any way you wish. If you want a little bit of challenge, you could make a little step back and then slowly lower yourself to the lunge, but you could go down any other way. And let's just try the same on the other side. So you can move that leg forward and come into some sort of lunge. And here, the rule is the same. So if you're that person that tends to say like, oh, no, it's too much for my knees, what might be happening is that you're really collapsing all your weight into that knee rather than treating your entire lower leg as one big foot, where you spread that weight evenly over. And that might make enormous difference. That might be just enough to stop feeling the pressure on your knee. But obviously, if you need to pad your knee, you pad your knee, right? And here, you could start with that, just getting accustomed to this position. How does it feel? Any sensations in the front? And you're going away from anything that is super intense. You don't want a big stretch. You don't want a big pull. Some gentle sensations, of course, they're fine. We are working now at this part of the body, right? Whenever you had enough in here, you tuck the toes under, lift the bottom knee, and you can come up. And again, you don't want to be too wide. You don't really want it to be a big, big step. Something smaller. Not so small that nothing is happening. Big enough to start feeling that, okay, that front of the thigh might be opening. So I might just position myself here so that you see it. You can decide where your feet want to land. The toes are pointing forward. That back heel is still lifted, and both knees are bent. The hips are loose. The legs are bouncy. The weight is right in the middle of both feet, and your knees are leaning forward, no leaning back. You're somewhere in the middle with your head above the pelvis. Okay. So once you established all of that, there is that slow, gentle process of allowing your heel to drop away. Only the heel drops away, so nothing else changes. I'm not changing the position of my head, I'm not shifting the weight, nothing else changes. The only thing that happens is that heel gets encouraged to drop away. And on that side, I definitely feel something is going on, that does something to the front of my thigh. I feel it there. The heel might rest, might not rest. While it rests on the floor, you could continue with that down and back pathway. heel reaching down and back, down and back. And it still continues to do something. And if you want to make it into a whole body movement, you might add the arm on this side as well. And then you know, okay, this is that whole fascia line now, where something happens. But you see, I'm not really going for a back bend. I'm only lifting the arm up. I'm not arching at the back. Reaching upwards will be enough to feel just a little bit more here, okay? And then you can step forward, observe how it feels, maybe walk a bit. And that's about it. So you can give yourself just a little moment standing still, observing all the connection from the feet through the legs, through the whole front, through the belly and torso. So I hope that you found this entire series useful. If you haven't seen the previous episode, please do. Don't forget to subscribe. I share one video every Monday. And if you'd like to know more about those connections between the tension that you are holding in your body and your emotional states, the state of your nervous system, and how you could regulate it so that you're pain-free, tension-free, then please join my newsletter with kindness, which I also send every Monday. You can find the link to the newsletter in the description below. Thank you very much.